When people talk about survival horror in video games, most individuals will utter two words: Resident Evil. It was the game that essentially created a brand new gaming experience in which you control a character through a nightmarish set of pre-rendered environments, fighting hordes of infected and mutated creatures, with the aim of the game being to survive to the very end and escape with all your limbs intact. Capcom clearly had struck on a winning formula, and although later installments are said to be not on par with previous games in the series, players are still reminded of how incredible some of those early games were when 3D was kind of in its infancy and tank controls were the norm. Well, Konami wanted to put their own spin on survival horror and would do so with the Silent Hill series. The first game on the PlayStation 1 is no doubt a classic. Despite not looking that good nowadays, back in 1999 this was the game that reimagined survival horror by placing the core mechanics of what Capcom achieved, i.e. a character running around in a nightmarish abandoned town at night, whilst adding in much more of an engaging story that disturbs the player on a deeper, more psychological level. Silent Hill dared to be slightly different, offering a town that, like a chameleon, changes once the player enters, and then it becomes their very own hell, or personalised nightmare. The only way to get through Silent Hill is to run all over the place with only a flashlight to help illuminate your way, and solve the game's many puzzles, hopefully picking up weapons with a view to trying to escape the town forever. Whilst Resident Evil gave the player jump scares and was at times a little creepy, Silent Hill deliberately kept players in the dark, literally, with waves and waves of eerie fog sweeping around the town, letting you know you are not alone. The game was a resounding success, and it was praised for its differing approach to survival horror, with players feeling unsettled whilst playing, yet at the same time drawn into finding out just what was going on in this creepy little town. So, with the first Silent Hill being a smash hit, it was a given that Konami would bring out a sequel and would do it on what was then the next generation of consoles, the PlayStation 2.
The name on the envelope said Mary. My wife's name. It's ridiculous. Couldn't possibly be true.
Silent Hill 2 does not follow on from encounters in the first game, and players assume the role of newcomer to the series James Sunderland, who has arrived in town to try and find his wife Mary after she tragically passed away from a life-threatening illness 3 years ago.
Are you taping again? Come on. I don't know why, but I just love it here.
You see, although she had passed away, James receives a letter from her asking him to meet her in their special place in Silent Hill itself. James is the town's latest victim and must work his way through Silent Hill 2's parallel locations, solving puzzles, defeating terrifying creatures, solving clues, and must try not to lose his sanity whilst doing all this. You see, the game is much darker than the last, with a lot more focus on the story and characters that he encounters.
It wasn't me. I didn't do it.
Do what? Not to mention, everywhere James goes, he's reminded of his wife in some ways, such as her clothes being in an abandoned apartment complex, or certain characters mentioning Mary as if she had never died. Third, toying with James on a psychological level and hooking him deeper and deeper into a never-ending plot of deceit.
Huh? Are you blind or something?
What's that letter?
None of your business. You didn't love Mary anyway.
Wait! How do you know Mary's name?
The game once again was a resounding success and remains one of the best survival horror games out there. The version I'll be reviewing is Silent Hill 2 Director's Cut, which was released in 2003. The game features the full Silent Hill 2 game, plus a bonus scenario in which players can control a different character called Maria in her own little spin-off adventure, which is available right from the start at the menu screen. It has been honestly 16 years since I last played Silent Hill 2, and I still own the first 2-disc edition, which amazingly still works. Believe it or not, I have only played this game a few times. I bought it when it first came out in 2001 and completed it. I don't think I ever played it again, as the game did leave me with one hell of an awesome, super scary gaming experience. So for this review, I decided to face my fears and return to Silent Hill 2 all these years later. I will be reviewing this game in full, which is entitled A Letter from Silent Heaven, as well as the bonus scenario in which you assume control of Maria in Born from a Wish later as well. So we have a lot to get through. So let's take a deep breath and visit Silent Hill for the second installment in the series. Our story begins with a reflection of a confused man in the toilet staring at himself in the mirror, feeling very uneasy, questioning if someone called Mary could really be in this town. The man is James Sunderland, and it soon becomes apparent that Mary, his wife, died 3 years ago, yet despite this she has written him a letter beckoning him to visit Silent Hill once again to meet her there. James and Mary had visited the town before her unfortunate death, and Mary had developed a fondness for the town due to its peacefulness and serenity. The letter states that James had promised to take her back someday and that she would be waiting for him in their special place. It is obvious from the start that James is still grieving over Mary, and despite the circumstances being almost impossible that she could write a letter, he decides to indulge the invitation in hopes of finding her and being reunited with his lost love.
Excuse me,
I'm sorry. I
No,
was
it's
just...
okay. I didn't mean to scare you. I'm kind of lost.
Soon after arriving, James finds a graveyard and meets a strange woman called Angela who claims to be searching for her mother. James mentions he has to go to Silent Hill, asking if this is indeed the right way.
Is this the right way?
She claims it is, but also warns him that he shouldn't go there and that the town is extremely dangerous, foggy, and that there's something wrong with it.
Thanks.
James believes Angela, but really doesn't care what horrors lurk inside Silent Hill. His love for Mary and his willingness to be with her again are so strong that he decides to go anyway, whatever the cost. As soon as he arrives, he finds the town shrouded in darkness, with thick fog seemingly evaporating the town. James only has a few leads as to what Mary meant by its special place. Was it the lake, the park, the hotel? With only a map at his disposal to help him, James must navigate the town to try and get to these locations. Although the map tells him where the places are, James quickly discovers that the routes are blocked by chasms and are seemingly impassable, meaning he must try and find alternate routes to try and get to each one. It isn't long before he spots a trail of blood and spots the first of what will be many creatures he meets in the game. He also finds a makeshift weapon and a radio which at first he thinks is broken, when all it emits is the sound of static. He quickly learns that the static indicates whenever dangerous monsters are near. Armed with these simple components, James is thrust headlong into the town of Silent Hill and must brave the horrors the town produces to find out the truth as to whether this is someone's cruel joke or if Mary is dead or alive. Gameplay. Silent Hill 2 is a third-person survival horror action puzzle game in which you play as James Sunderland, who is searching the eerie town of Silent Hill in the hope of finding some answers after his deceased wife sent him a letter to meet him somewhere in the town. The aim of the game is to use the map and gather information on where to go. As he visits each location, this shows up as red on the map and tells the player that they must find a way to get to it to not only advance the story and plot further, but to also gather key items essential to solving the many puzzles that hold James's progress. At first, things are extremely confusing, with the town seemingly feeling bigger than it is. It can be easy to go the wrong way. But thankfully the map helps you out because Silent Hill has many dead ends and chasms that cannot be passed. The map once again highlights those in red squiggles once the player has found them. This not only helps keep James on track, but also helps the player get used to the game's style, which does differ from just running and gunning. At the start of the game, James gets his hands on a makeshift wooden plank which he can use as a weapon against some of the demonic creatures that inhabit this cursed town. The more progress James makes means he has the opportunity to upgrade to a few more powerful weapons to help him battle the more threatening creatures and bosses that wait for him throughout the town. In typical survival horror fashion, pressing start brings up an inventory screen. It is here that you can cycle through the items in your possession, reload your current weapons, check on your current health status and combine certain items, as many puzzles demand that James must use his brains to place 2 or 3 items together to help solve a puzzle and to make further progress throughout Silent Hill. Luckily for James, Silent Hill 2 is littered with ammo to pick up, and it's very possible to acquire and stockpile quite a lot to deal with some of the tougher adversaries encountered through the latter sections of the game. Strangely enough, this being a game that is based on realism, you won't find AK-47s, rocket or missile launchers or any of those weapons. James will get to fire a handgun, a shotgun and a rifle. All 3 have different strengths and weaknesses, such as the handgun being perfect against the nurses and inside out enemies lurking in the shadows, but useless against some of the later bosses. The shotgun is extremely powerful, but there's a delay in when James fires each shot. Also, if you are facing a boss, this means that you might take unintentional damage due to this. The rifle is easily the quickest weapon and there's no delay, but it can only hold 4 bullets at a time, so you have to constantly reload every time you use it. So the player has to work within the limitations of these weapons and find out the best way to fight or even run from these hellish creatures. Unlike Resident Evil, James can carry as many items as he likes, and so item management becomes slightly easier, with the player only really having to make sure that they have picked up important items as well as keeping track of how much ammunition they currently have. Keeping track of James's health is extremely pivotal as he treks through the town. As I mentioned, the only way to do this is to push the start button, which brings up the menu, and under status is a freeze frame picture of your current position. It starts off as green, which indicates that he has full health. If James takes damage, then the screen will degenerate in colour depending on the severity and frequency of the wound. When it gets to flashing red, this means that James is almost dead and another attack might just finish him off. Luckily, the town of Silent Hill is littered with health in the form of health drinks, medikits and ampoules. It's imperative that each time James takes a hit that you ensure his health doesn't run out completely. If this happens, then it's game over and the player will have to either start again or restart from a save point. Video game presentation. Silent Hill 2 features a very dark graphical style which never lets up right from the start of the game. The buildings and locations are extremely well detailed and purposeful, with many rooms giving the player a sense of terror and uneasy feelings when playing. The fog never really lets up outside and you can't see what's ahead. Whilst this might bother some players used to being able to see where they are going in most 3D games, this is done purposely to not only represent James's feelings of confusion, but also never letting him see exactly what is going on around him. Not only that, but the camera doesn't always follow a traditional behind the character perspective when moving James, so it's more like an interactive horror movie with the camera sweeping in front of him, or to the side and occasionally from above. In certain corridors, the camera never lets you see all the way down to the end until James gets there. I understand why Konami chose to go this route with the camera, but sometimes it can be really annoying when you can't see behind James, or when you're trying to get away from the creatures. You must run and wait for the camera to try and sweep behind him. This means that creatures can take him by surprise every once in a while, so care must be taken when controlling him. The in-game enemies look and can be extremely threatening, and despite there only really being a handful of them, they do vary in some of their attacks. I say they can be threatening because most of the time you can just run past them and save some ammo, but with the restricted viewpoint, taking them down becomes necessary in places because they do tend to get in the way when you're trying to get by or solve an important puzzle. Even if you do take them down sometimes when you leave the area and come back, the game sometimes respawns them, so you can never always be sure that you've got them all. The inside-out tortured monsters who spew what appears to be acid are among the most common type you will probably face most of your time in the game. They're pretty much almost everywhere and are only really a problem when there are 2 or 3 of them in the way. I did get caught unawares a few times during my initial first playthrough of the game for this review. The weapon-wielding nurses you meet in Brookhaven, however, are a step up from these creatures in that they try and clobber poor James. They can be easily taken down with some bullets, but again when they are in clusters you need to pick your targets very carefully. The problem is that as James is not really a gun expert or a marksman, he can't really aim at multiple targets or lock onto them, so he can only really shoot one at a time. So he has to kind of stop shooting one to deal with another. Which kind of makes sense as our protagonist is no Leon Kennedy, just an ordinary man forced to fight for his survival. I do have another bugbear, and it's the map. Now how can the map be annoying, you may ask? Well, check this out. I've just been to the park, and now I need to turn left to go to the museum. I turn left in the game, and it takes me in completely the other direction. So essentially to go left, I must turn right. It makes absolutely no sense, as when James is inside and has a map, it changes back to normal. I did kind of manage to adapt to it, but just felt that it slowed me down and impeded my progress at times, especially when I knew what I had to do. With repeated plays it does become less of an issue, but first timers may well feel annoyed. I love the cutscenes and the character models. Konami really pushed to make you feel that this town and the people James meets are as real as they can be. Every person he meets is not just shallow and generic, they have depth and personality, and they are just so well developed, and a lot of thought has been given into how they move and act. Take Maria for example. Just after James enters the park for the first time, he meets up with her and the two head on over to the bowling alley. It's here that James sees Laura again and she predictably runs off. Maria implores you to help find the girl and they run down to an alley to a locked door.
She went through there.
Is there any other way?
Yeah, there is. Right through there.
It's no good. It's locked.
Now, it's not just the fact that Maria coincidentally has the key to the door, but the way she opens the door and acts around James in a very flirtatious manner is very clever. She also in many ways dictates the pace for most of the adventure. When the two lose each other, when the hospital turns into the nightmare version, he finds her again in the basement and she just tears into him, shouting at him for leaving her alone and not being with her.
I'm glad you're alive.
Anyway! What do you mean, anyway? You don't sound very happy to see me. I was almost killed back there. Why didn't you try to save me? All you care about is that dead wife of yours. I've never been so scared in my whole life. You couldn't care less about me, could you?
The voice actors really give their performance conviction and believability.
Did I scare you?
Yeah, you did.
You're here to find Mary, aren't you, James? Well, have you?
No.
With Laura acting just like a little girl, mischievous but also wanting to find Mary also. She was also an interesting character. There are scenes when she is just playing or drawing and doing the things a little girl would do.
Laura?
Huh? You know my name?
Eddie told me.
That big fat blabbermouth.
How do you know about Mary?
Eddie and Angela are great too. When Laura runs off, Eddie just doesn't seem bothered and would much rather eat his pizza than worry about a small child.
Eddie, let's go after her.
Huh? Laura? But why?
Laura, is that her name?
That's what she said.
This town is full of monsters. How can you sit there and eat pizza?
She said she was fine by herself.
You do get some interaction with him, but again most of his scenes involve James arriving just after he has killed someone and blaming others, which again shows that he has a darker unseen side.
You killed him?
But it wasn't my fault. He made me do it.
Calm down, Eddie. Tell me what happened.
That guy, he had it coming. I didn't do anything. He just came after me. Besides, he was making fun of me with his eyes, like that other one.
Just for that you killed him?
Oh, it's you.
Yeah, I'm James.
Angela.
Angela, okay. I don't know what you're planning, but there's always another way.
Really?
Angela seems to know what is happening already in the town, and most of the events don't really faze her in the way that you would think. Although she was shocked when the abstract daddy boss attacked her, she claimed he was always attacking her. To it's as though she accepts what the town is throwing at her, no matter how unusual. The music is genuinely disturbing and really added that extra layer of fear when I played the game. Often it's very calm in empty areas, but when you enter a new area full of monsters, the music suddenly changes and gets louder. There's always a distinct sudden change of pace to keep you on your toes and to make you feel genuinely fearful at certain points in the game. Not only that, but with each step James makes deeper into his own personal hell, the stranger the music and sounds become, combined with questions of what horrors will the game unfurl next. I think that the in-game music, in my opinion, is just incredibly full of depth and accompanies the gameplay perfectly. Final boss, video game ending. There are indeed 6 endings you can achieve in Silent Hill 2, and you have to meet certain requirements to get some of them. I was fortunate enough to get them all, and will show you the first ending I received, which was in water, which I guess is the bad ending, and then I will talk about the others and how to get them. James's final destination in Silent Hill is the Lakeview Hotel. However, he has to do some more puzzling to get his hands on the videotape that he needs, the key to room 302, and he must find 3 music boxes which have to be used in the lobby in order to get his hands on a key which unlocks the entrance to the 3rd floor. After acquiring these items, James is able to access the final room and play the videotape in the VCR, which shows a very happy
So
Mary
peaceful.
talking about how much she loves the town.
You know what I heard? This whole area used to be a sacred place. I think I can see why. It's too bad we have to leave. Please promise you'll take me again, James.
The tape then switches to something more sinister as we finally discover the truth as to what happened to Mary. Although she was dying, James can be seen putting an end to her suffering, after which Laura runs in asking if he has found Mary.
So there you are, James. Did you get the letter? Did you find Mary? If not, let's get going already, okay?
Laura.
James confesses what he's done to her, and full of anger she shouts at him before she tells him that Mary had always been waiting for him.
You killer! Why'd you do it? I hate you! I want her back! Give her back to me! I knew it! You didn't care about her! I hate you, James! I hate you! I hate you! I hate you!
James apologises and Laura leaves. After leaving the hotel room, he discovers that now the Lakeview Hotel is in its alternate nightmarish form, and he makes his way through the same areas which are now full of muddy water. On the way out, he encounters Angela, who is standing on a set of burning stairs.
left. Maybe then I can rest. Mama, why are you running away? You're not my mama. It's you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Angela, no.
She thanks him for saving her life earlier from the abstract daddy, but states that she isn't worthy of being saved. She asks for her knife back, but James refuses to hand it over, fearing that she would use it to end her own life.
Give me back that knife.
No. I won't.
Saving it for yourself?
Me? No. I'd never kill myself.
After she leaves, James continues his journey through the abandoned Ultimate Hotel and comes to a door. Looking up, he sees Maria being brought out by two pyramid heads who coldly run her through with their sharp spears. James falls to his knees and realises that the only way to end his own hell is to kill them. James must adopt the same strategy of firing at the pyramid heads but not letting them get too close. The bosses are slow, but they don't carry these huge knives. This time they use their spears, and if they stab James, this can cause some fatal injuries, so you have to monitor your health almost constantly if you take a hit. At this point you should have plenty of health and ammunition, so my advice is to stick and move as best as you can. You can be super careful, fire once and then move, which is a safe option, but I just fired relentlessly, took some hits, healed immediately, moved and repeated. Normally I wouldn't be so reckless, but I had way more health than I needed, so I kept at it. After using the shotgun, I counted it took me at least 30 shots to make them finally give up. Rather than explode or ooze away in typical boss fashion, they simply walk over to the middle of the room and freeze in their current state. After which they both reveal to be holding two coloured eggs, which can be used in any order on the two doors leading out. The two doors are literally right next to each other, so it makes no difference which one you choose to go through. James then finds himself running down a long corridor whilst the conversation between him and Mary is playing out as he runs towards the other side. After going through the door, he finds himself outside, where he then climbs a series of metal staircases all the way to the top into a large room with a huge bed in the middle. He sees what he thinks is Mary standing looking outside of the window and approaches her.
Mary?
Wrong again. Mary's dead. You killed her.
Maria? Maria, I'm done with you.
What do you mean? But I can be yours. I'll be here for you forever. And I'll never yell at you or make you feel
Once
bad.
again, it's not Mary, but Maria, who callously tells him that Mary's dead. James rejects her by saying he doesn't need her anymore. Maria, however, makes one last ditch attempt, pleads her case, and says that she can be his forever. However, Maria refuses to accept James's refusal to accept her, and then changes into a demonic version strapped to a bed with sharp nasty chains. This is the final boss. Maria then follows James around the room and has two modes of attack. One in which she grabs the protagonist by the neck and attempts to strangle him, the other she unleashes some deadly butterflies which paralyse James, temporarily making him more vulnerable to attack. I know this may seem a bit of a repeat, but the best method is to just do what you've been doing all along and shoot and move. Try and avoid her attacks and heal yourself if she strangles you immediately. I used the combination of the shotgun and rifle and took her down with about 16 hits, after which the bed drops and the demon lies on the floor.
away my life.
after which your only option is to put it out of its misery.
And you're suffering for
After this happens, the screen fades to black,
It's enough.
and then we open with another scene in which James finally gets to meet his wife Mary, and the two have a heart-to-heart about James's reasons for ending her life 3 years earlier. Mary forgives James and hands him a letter before dying once again in front of him.
Mary,
James,
James picks up the corpse, and you hear James say about how he can't go on without her. You then hear James get into his car, and presumably he drives it into the lake, committing suicide in order to be with his beloved Mary once again. As this occurs, we get to see the long letter
can
Mary
live
had
together.
written for James, which seems to take ages to end. After this you get a credit screen, and you are ranked on how well you played before the game takes you back to the main title screen. Okay, so I mentioned that there were 6 endings you can achieve in Silent Hill, and there are many theories on how to achieve them. 4 endings require you to beat the Demon Mary boss, and 2 others are joke endings. I'll focus on each ending as I achieved it and reveal how to get them. Also note that when James reaches the top of the final boss room in the game, depending on what ending you're trying to achieve, the dialogue and cutscene may be radically different from the last playthrough. Maria may be in different positions when you get into the room, or you will find that Maria has been replaced with Mary. Okay. To get the in-water ending, the one I've just mentioned, you need to play in a reckless fashion, i.e. don't heal straight away, examine Angela's knife often, read the diary on the hospital roof, and also listen to the conversation in the headphones in the second floor alternate nightmarish hotel room. Essentially play in an unstructured fashion, and chances are you will receive this ending. The second ending I got was Leave, and I achieved this by simply healing James when necessary and following the game in a structured fashion, ensuring I didn't deviate from the path too much. You must also play like you want to win. Once you beat the game, you see James and Laura leaving Silent Hill at the churchyard. This, I understand, is the simplest ending to achieve.
that wasn't Mary. Mary's gone. That was just something Maria? Maria,
What, James?
I want you. I want you with me.
Are you sure?
The third ending I received was the Maria ending. Now there are many opinions on how to get this ending, and I did a lot of research. A lot of people say that you need to spend a lot of time with Maria when she's following you around. You need to check up on her often in the hospital, try and re-enter the door where a corpse is on the bed at the end of the prison section. They say you don't have to listen to the conversation as James is running down the corridor towards the end of the game. You know, the one where James is visiting Mary and she shouts at him. And make sure she never comes to any harm. Well, honestly guys, I didn't check up on her at all. I left her behind a ton of times, and I guess I did protect her when I needed to, but this was very sparingly. The only thing I did do was I did try to re-enter the room when she died a few times, and I didn't listen to the conversation at the end of the game. So I only really did a few things, and I wasn't really expecting to get this ending, but after blasting Demon Mary, James finds himself back at the park, where himself and Maria leave Silent Hill together, but not before Maria coughs, indicating that she might not be long for this world. Ending number 4. This is quite an easy ending to attain and involves aliens and Harry Mason from the first game abducting poor James. To get this funny joke ending, you must play through the game once and then start a new game. Once the game starts up, you will find a blue gem in one of the toilet stalls where James starts the game. Grab it and use it in these 3 locations. After beating the boss Flesh Lips in the hospital, James finds himself in the alternate hospital first floor garden. Immediately use it here. Then later on in the game, use it in front of the rowboat before rowing to the hotel. Then as soon as you enter room 312, use it again by the window. You will know when the gem has worked because you get a short cutscene in each location showing flying saucers rapidly approaching. Once you have done all 3 of these and used the gem in these 3 locations, the game ends, meaning you don't have to fight the Pyramid Head or the Demon Mary boss. You get this cool 1950s ending where James gets zapped and taken away. Uber coolness. Ending number 5. Now, as if things couldn't get any weirder, there's a second joke ending in the game and it is absolutely awesome. To get it, you must play through the game, making sure you get the 3 endings in Water, Leave, and Maria ending, or the Rebirth ending, which I will talk about in a minute. I managed to get the first 3 endings, and upon entering the park and then leaving the park for the first time, head west of Jack's Inn and you will find an open area with a doghouse in it. This doghouse has a strange bone-shaped key which you have to use on the 3rd floor nightmare version of the Lakeview Hotel. You must use it on the observation room and hey presto, James finds out that all his suffering was caused by a cheeky little dog playing with the controls. James's dialogue then turns to Japanese, but what a hilarious ending, and I was smiling non-stop from ear to ear, particularly with the dog-themed music at the end showing the credits. The last ending is called Rebirth and can be achieved by beating the game at least once, wherein you have to then collect 4 items in the game. The White Chrism, which is in room 105 in the 1st floor Blue Creek Apartments. The book called Lost Memories at the Texon gas station. The Obsidian Goblet from the Silent Hill Historical Society Museum, it's in the Smash case. And finally the Crimson Ceremony book. Now it is in the reading room in the nightmare version of the hotel, so you can only get it after you have watched the VCR tape. Once you beat the Demon Mary, you will see James in the boat with Mary's corpse. He plans on using the 4 items in order to bring Mary back from the dead, as he cannot bear to be without her.
Forgive me for waking you. But without you, I just can't go on.
Okay, so those are the endings. There are also 2 secret weapons to be found in the game. After beating the game at least once and starting a new one, you will find that just before entering the town you will hear a loud buzz. Investigate the log here and you will have the chainsaw. This is a very effective weapon, but it does take a few seconds to rev up, so James is vulnerable while this happens. It's a nice tool to help save on handgun ammo early on in the game, but will not be as effective against tougher enemies such as the nurses or the abstract daddies in the hotel. There's also a hyper spray which appears again after beating the game once. It can be found in the caravan here. It apparently paralyses enemies, and there are also a few types which vary in their power severity. I managed to grab the purple spray and found it does paralyse enemies but can also injure James at the same time, rendering it sometimes a little bit useless. After James uses the key to enter the Blue Creek Apartments and jumps from one building to the next, there's a save which is very easy to miss. which he can open. Now this is where it gets a bit disgusting, as you have to investigate the toilet. I know, right? He then rolls up his sleeve and grabs a piece of paper at the bottom of the slime in the bowl. It is a combination for the safe. Crack the safe open using the code and you will get a ton of extra ammo. In the Brookhaven Hospital, after James has found Maria again in the basement, head into the lift and all of a sudden the sounds of a game show starts playing. The show is called Trick or Treat and eerily introduces James as the unlucky contestant. The host will then ask 3 questions and state that if he knows the answers, James must go to the storeroom on the 3rd floor and use these answers on a box. If he guesses correctly, then once again he can get shed loads of ammo in the form of shotgun shells. Guess incorrectly and a gas will emit from the box, causing him damage. I would recommend saving just after finding Maria again, as you can't make any mistakes on the box. If you do, then you just won't get the ammo, so if you do mess up, reload your game and try the puzzle again. I will say it's definitely worth it and will make the game slightly easier having all that extra ammo. I did mention earlier that there's a bonus scenario in which you can play as Maria in her own tiny adventure. It's called Born from a Wish, and starting the game allows you to play out events through Maria's eyes just before she met James. The game starts in Heaven's Night, the club that James and Maria went through in the main quest. Maria is overwhelmed with the monster presence and must use her revolver and cleaver to fight her way through the town. She is frightened and is hoping to find that someone else is alive, as she doesn't want to be alone. She eventually makes her way to a new location, the Baldwin Mansion, which is right near the Blue Creek apartment block. After exploring the mansion, she comes to a door in which she cannot get into. The voice demands to be left alone, but Maria persists on keeping the conversation going and learns that the voice's name is called Ernest Baldwin. Maria never gets to see Ernest at all, and all the conversation between them is done through a door. She also finds a birthday card which reminds Ernest of his daughter, who has sadly passed away. This wins his trust, and eventually Ernest asks Maria to retrieve a very important white liquid from the Blue Creek apartments next door, this being the white chrism. Apparently he cannot go himself, so Maria agrees to this request, and upon managing to get it, she gives it to him. Ernest warns her that the man she is about to meet is called James Sunderland and he is very bad, and he also states that he is looking for the you that isn't you. Very strange. Once the door opens, Maria is surprised to find that there is no one there. She leaves the mansion, and after pulling out her gun, she contemplates suicide. However, in a move that seems really strange, she tosses her gun away and heads over to the park, and I still don't quite understand why she would do that, given that the whole town is full of horrific creatures. It is then that she meets up with James. The scenario itself is very short, with there being an extremely annoying tombstone puzzle to solve, which caused me a lot of frustration. Still, as strange as the scenario was, it was a nice extra that was a lot of fun to play. Final thoughts. Silent Hill 2 is definitely a standout survival horror game that built upon the foundations of the original to create a game that not only plays well, but introduces a new layer of fear and uncertainty to the player. It would have been so easy for Konami to emulate Resident Evil down to the latter and leave it at that. However, they opted to go much deeper and make the game much more of a psychological experience by introducing a dark, haunting game that never lets up and again allows you to fear what you see but also what you don't. It's clear that this is just not your typical horror game, with the voice acting and story being extremely well done. There are, as I mentioned earlier, a few gripes with the map and the in-game camera, which is more akin to a film than a video game, as the camera doesn't really follow James from the same perspective, making it very hard to see what is happening until it is too late. I also think that the game does have too many puzzles in it, and this may put some people off. Whilst I apologise for making so many Resident Evil comparisons, as that game did have a lot of puzzles, this game has a lot more than those games ever did, I think, which kind of slowed down the pacing for me and took me a long while to complete. I also do feel that there should have been a better weapon to find than the chainsaw and the hyper spray after beating the game. They're the only two extras there, and as cool as the chainsaw is, it would only be useful until you get to the hospital, as the enemies just get tougher after that, so you are forced to resort back to your guns. Despite these issues, I recommend this game highly, and the fact that there are 6 endings to achieve give it replayability, and despite this game sometimes having off-putting elements, it is possible to adapt to them. With that, I give Silent Hill 2 a very bloody final rating of 4.6 out of 5. Play this awesome game, as it's an awesome experience you won't soon forget.